Welcome in to the News Made Simple, where we say the quiet parts out loud. We say the quiet parts out loud here, and it is brought to you, as always, by the Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. Go to shiftcrypto.ch to get yourself one of those. Shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin Made Simple. Use the promo code Bitcoin Made Simple to get 5% off. And also check out Movies Plus. I added more movies there. So we got some more documentaries, Bitcoin documentaries. Always check that out. But Philip, the Gibson guitar, what is up?
What's up? Good morning. Good morning. Very, very stoked to get into some of the news topics today. By the way, what movies did you add to Movies Plus?
So I added it is called Bond to Unbind. It's about the El Salvador adopting Bitcoin and all that kind of stuff. So adding that plus another one from the same filmmaker, that's a older one that has footage all the way back to like 2011. We also have some stuff I can't officially announce because the contract has not quite been signed, but I mean it's good to go that we'll be signing. So, constantly in flux and working towards it. But we're adding new stuff, and you plebs supporting us helps make the dream work. The teamwork makes the dream work. So,
yes, sir.
Anyways, and for those wondering, Luke is not sunning his balls. We don't know where he is. Maybe he is sunning his balls. I have no idea. So he is not here today, but it'll just be Philip and myself.
Please call me Phil.
Not Philip.
No. I was specifically named after Phil Mickelson. Not that I'm really? An avid golfer, but
Oh, you were named after Phil Mickelson?
I was. It was either that or it was Aiden, and that was my dad's idea, and my mother didn't want a pyro child, which she didn't end up getting one because I don't have like a fixation with lighting fireworks and lighting shit on fire. But
hey, that worked out.
Some Phil lore for you.
So, wait, is that your real last name?
Mickelson? No.
I thought you said Phil Lore.
So no, like lore. You know what lore is?
Yeah. Oh, okay. I don't know. I thought
that was lore about Phil. Etymology of Phil's name, not etymology, whatever. Let's give the people what they came here for.
Yeah, they came here to learn about Phil's name. So it's not Philip. It's not. It is or
no. It's just let's just stick with Phil.
Okay. So let's get into the recession that seems to be looming, impending. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think we're going to hit one?
We definitely are. This goes with the thesis that the Fed's MO is to destroy markets because it doesn't care. And in order to strengthen the dollar, they need to destroy foreign capital markets and offshore dollars. And essentially, this is the battle between Davos or the European Union, the EU, trying to get back financial control in the world that it sort of had before the end of World War II. And they're trying to weaken the financial stability and supremacy that comes from the Federal Reserve and the Federal Reserve System in America, essentially. And what the Fed's trying to do is tighten and make cheap dollars and the accessibility of it not accessible by not making it cheap, by making it expensive, by raising rates and tightening. And arguably, they've been tightening since almost a year ago now, because the June, I think it was the FOMC meeting of June last year was on the 15th or 16th. And we're coming up on the next one this following week. I believe it starts the 13th next week. And you can expect probably another, raise in 50 basis points because the Fed is showing no signs of stopping QT and raising rates, especially, I think I mentioned this last episode, but especially where the savings rate is I think it's only like 4%. And when it was, I believe, 8% during COVID, people were just hoarding dollars because of the uncertainty, because COVID happened and we had the COVID crash in March 2020. People were starting to save. And that's when, not only because of the bailouts of the cruise ships and airlines and all these other industries, as the Fed does, of being the lender of last resort and the protector of the public, but you also saw them do QE, more money printing, to incentivize people to stop saving. And we're seeing the opposite of that now. There's no savings rate, and they're trying to rein in inflation to really maintain its dominance, and to just basically say, hey world, we're serious and we want to maintain our credibility. And so that's why you're going to keep seeing tightening. And if it means that the Dow is going to tank a little bit, that's fine, because in the long run, you're going to see capital flight come from Europe and everywhere else in the world, because the Fed can actually get away with quantitative tightening because the majority of debt is denominated in dollars. And whereas all these other currencies, I mean, they don't have the supremacy. And so the tightening makes it more difficult for them to pay off their debt in dollars, which causes them to hyperinflate. And so it's not going to be wise to invest in other countries when those currencies are arguably worthless. So you're going to have capital flight come out of those countries and flood into the United States. And then you might see a recovery rally in the Dow. So, how soon this happens, I really don't know. But it might happen sooner than we think, because, we've been living in like a bull market for half a century, right? Or whenever we went off the gold standard and we just kept printing money, and people relied on Fed bailouts and whatnot. And I guess the last major tightening we saw was since Volcker. And so, people are going to move their money to where it's going to be treated best, and that's going to be the United States at the end of the day, because they have the money, the power of transmitting, making money. And that's what the Federal Reserve banking system.
What do you think it's going to do to the price of commodities, though? Like,
Yeah.
the price of the commodities are going up, and everything's getting more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, people are going to like be making less money. So like, I'm just like, as far as like the average American, what's life going to be like?
It's going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy. This is kind of like if we had markets do what they're supposed to do, and we didn't have these extended out like boom bust cycles that are the cause of central planning and the manipulation monetary policy by the Fed. These things would fix themselves, kind of like we saw before the crash, the major crash that we saw in 1929, like before the Great Depression. There was one, I believe, in 1920, and it was even worse than the 1929 crash. But
in 1920,
yeah, 1920, there was a crash that was worse than what caused the Great Depression. But I believe that was like when Hoover was in charge, and there wasn't that bailout mentality, and it was tough and it was difficult, but it was able to recover in like a year, because markets are going to market. Markets are, people in the free market are going to find those solutions, because when you have a crash like that, that sends a clear signal of what people should and should not do with their money. And you didn't see that distortion of just expansion of the money supply and just cheap credit flooding into things and speculative assets and just malinvestment. You didn't see that in that 1920 crash. So I'm not saying that you're going to see a complete laissez-faire thing happen with this, but it might be something similar, because at the end of the day, the United States, or at least Team Fed, as I like to call it, Federal Reserve, the commercial banks, the regional banks, just that lobby of banks are fighting for their lives to preserve their credibility and dominance and the strength of the dollar. And so, if that means that they're going to let markets suffer to get there and maintain their dominance, then they will do so. And so, it is going to be painful for families everywhere. And it's just part of that quote unquote correction. And I think as that correction occurs, that might also lead to a correction in maybe foreign policy and domestic policy, because I mean, you don't really have a proxy war ish form like policy without a money printer, right? And so this might kind of bleed into changes in fiscal policy. And so that might cause an end to proxy war efforts in a current event war that's been happening since February. And so that might also lead to stopping sanctions. I mean, Janet Yellen last week, like head of the Treasury of the United States, was saying, hey, these sanctions on Russia are kind of stupid. And for her to say that, I mean, that's just her acting as a statist, making the most rational economic decision. But I mean, for her to say that, we're already kind of seeing this further bifurcation of power. And I think if we get more people kind of on that train, you're going to see that change in fiscal policy and foreign policy. And if we see less sanctions, then, I mean, the sanctions are the only reason why Russia is benefiting so much and the price of oil is so high. And so if we see a tapering off of those sort of policies, you're going to see commodities prices drop and life is going to be less hard for the average American. So I think we're heading in the right direction, but it's got to get worse before it gets better, if that makes sense.
I wonder what that does to the price of Bitcoin. I know we're not big price speculators, but it's just weird because, you would think everything going to hell in a handbasket would make the price of Bitcoin go up because people would start to see its value proposition. But
yeah,
I think it maybe boings down for a bit. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely being manipulated with futures markets, more big players getting involved because they, unless if you just have some Warren Buffett hubris and you hate the thing, which he's even capitulating a little bit because I forget what the name of the bank is, but he owns some financial institution bank that is putting some of their reserves in, well, it's crypto, and they're big fans of Ethereum, but even he's caving. But if you have that legacy financial system hubris and bias, you're not going to be pro Bitcoin. But everyone else has a brain and wants their money to be treated where it's treated best, they're going to pile into Bitcoin as much as they can. And this whole tapering of the Bitcoin price by manipulating futures markets is just an accumulation game for them. So I don't really know. It's watching Luongo market reports, it definitely is being messed with, the Bitcoin price. And I recall him saying that we should be really at the resistance should be like 33,000, and just where people are trying to put their money, it should be Bitcoin. I mean, it's the soundest. It should be a safe haven asset, and it's just completely out of this world that it is as low as it is. So Bitcoiners watching this should just take advantage of this and accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible because it's on sale, folks. So, I mean, just get it while it's as cheap. I mean, always buy, always be buying, and just
don't buy with debt. Don't leverage yourself.
Yeah, especially now if interest rates are going to keep crawling up, which I'm sure that they will. So just take advantage of this. Eventually, it's gonna pop because at the end of the day, it's still 21 million. Keep pushing the narrative that you need to take your keys off the exchange. This might be a beautiful plug for the Bitbox 02 again at shiftcrypto.ch, our favorite hardware wallet on the show here.
Don't forget .ch/Bitcoin made simple. That way you get to shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin made simple. That way they know that we sent you. Then use the promo
Yeah.
code Bitcoin Made Simple to get 5% off.
Yeah. Not your keys, not your cheese. I mean, if we, there's not a lot of volatility in the markets right now for some reason. And we need to change that. So, what better way than to just take all of your Bitcoin off the exchange and put on your big boy pants or big girl pants? Do we have female listeners? I hope we do.
I think like 10%. So shout
Yeah.
out to the strong 10% because um they carry the weight for they probably sit there, and for the rest of the women are trying to get
Yeah.
more women. We need more women in Bitcoin. I'm
The
sure every woman
lamans.
that's listening to this is laughing at that idea because that was an annoying thing last year.
There is a probability that it's really just the men using their wives' accounts to watch this.
That's true. That's
Maybe.
true. I mean, look at it this way: in future growth, percentage wise, will grow more in women than in men. The use of Bitcoin and other things, because you're starting from zero.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't
but
know. What do you think about the economy?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's going to be a recession. Um, I'm kind of weird about like with Bitcoin, because here's the thing with Bitcoin, and I think this being my first like real cycle and everything, is that like I really believed in the on-chain analytics.
Huh.
Like I was like, oh, that stuff is like a cheat code. You can see what's happening. Illiquid supply, blah blah blah. Coins leaving exchanges. Um, and then that didn't, well then like so like all last summer and leading into the fall, I was like, this is all being foretold by the numbers. And then when we went back up to all-time high in November, it was like, there we go. Um, and I was like, I knew it. I knew it. And I couldn't believe when Mr. Hoddle Magoo, if you're listening there, Mr. Magoo,
He doesn't listen to this.
who knows if he DM us if you do listen, Mr. Magoo. But I highly doubt he does. Only whenever he's on so that he can listen to himself. No, I'm kidding. But but yeah, he kept saying that we were gonna see a pullback in the price. I was like, what? Like, how in the world is he talking? Like, what world is he living on? What planet is he living on? Because I thought, like I had said, I had to sell some Bitcoin at 57,000 to buy my house, and I thought I was getting effed. I was like, by the time I sell my other house, Bitcoin's gonna be at like 100 grand minimum, if not 150. Like I'm getting so screwed. And here we are, 9 months later, and Bitcoin's at 30 grand, just sitting there. Um,
I won this week's price prediction, by the way,
yeah, barely.
if anyone's keeping tabs,
Um,
because we're
but
not.
no, we need to get better at that. Um, but yeah, so I just don't see. But like, so Magoo was talking about, like, he was like, if you pay attention to the the general sentiment of the market, the warning signs were there that it was going to pull back. So I've basically been trying to observe what's going on in Bitcoin from a sentiment standpoint. And like Bitcoiners, like there's more solid Bitcoiners getting minted on a regular basis. But like what's going on in the greater picture of the markets, like I think everybody is anticipating a drawdown of markets, of like people, the Fed quantitative tightening. People are going to be quantitative tightening their own budgets.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's absurd. And like I think I mentioned this before, but like, and not to sound like, oh, I'm so well to do, but like I'm not like the type of person that like the price of gas really affects me. I'm just like, whatever, it is what it is. It's a utility bill. And now I'm like, oh, like I don't know, that hurt. That wasn't fun. Um, so I mean, it's just I don't know. I feel like people are down, people are depressed, people are sad, and which is unfortunate. Um, so I don't know. I think that's the tricky thing with Bitcoin though, is you don't know when the value prop is really going to like take off. The decoupling that we all talk about, that's going to happen eventually. Um, but does it happen right now? I don't know.
Not
But
when they're trying to repress market price and accumulate.
and
Because
I
honestly, I think Bitcoiners will disagree with me on this, but I think Bitcoin is what Team Fed, again, as I like to call them, are going to try to rebuild their new financial infrastructure and system on top of.
only because they see that they can't stop it.
Yeah. Like if you can't beat them, join them kind of thing,
Yeah, they
And
definitely they don't want this system, but they're
no, they
like, how
don't, but
can we
it's,
make it our best to our best
yeah,
advantage?
yeah. It's, they don't really have a choice. If they want to preserve the credibility of the dollar, they might back it or run it on the most sound piece of technology that the world's ever seen. And it's kind of like the cleanest shirt in the dirty laundry sort of thing as well. And I want to bring this up. I wish I had the link, but in a private Slack group that I am in, there were there were talks during Trump's presidency at the I think at the treasury level and like the Fed level of backing US treasuries with a percentage of bullion and just having more of a commodity based, money. And that's what Russia's doing,
And
essentially.
maybe across the world we just start seeing that, and they'll start picking different spots. And really, honestly, like Bitcoin hasn't grown to the point and gotten mass adoption to the point that um like they can still be early to the game.
Yeah.
The Fed, like if they I keep saying this and I feel bad because like they're gonna try and cast this cellophane trap net uh, above the Bitcoin, actual Bitcoin, and catch as many people as possible in it so that they can then run their manipulated games. Um, so there will always be some form of bastardized version of the financial world that manipulates people to give more money to the rich and less to the poor. um it'll take a while to shake out, because I mean even in a hyper bitcoin in a hyper bitcoinization world, you will have people making Ponzi schemes on top of it. It's like people think that once we get to hyper Bitcoinization, we're going to be in this magical utopia where nobody does anything to take advantage of somebody else. That's just not going to happen. So it's always
Yeah.
going to exist. So I think the Fed is basically just like, all right, look, we don't want to lose our shirt. We don't want to lose our, we might basically they have to take a hit, but in order to position themselves for the long run, and be able to trap people on top of Bitcoin. So I don't know. That's just my theory.
Exactly.
But one of the other news items we wanted to talk about kind of fits this is the CBDC. They said it's going to take 5 years.
Yeah. And
It's not
then when it
happening.
comes to like a team building software, when it comes to the devs, they always extend that out. And I think they multiply it by 3. So essentially, would it really take 15 years? So something like this would be more of a disaster than the Obamacare website.
That's exactly what I was thinking about.
Yeah, yeah.
How long did
So
the Obamacare website take to make?
yeah, yeah. And so I was the one that shared this story in our little group chat, and I really want to dig into this. And I tweeted about this as well. So I found this on, I believe it was CoinDesk, but essentially Low Brainerd, the vice chair of the Federal Reserve, basically came out and said we're not gonna do this because it, like I was going back to saying what Dov was trying to do is destroy the power that the Fed has of controlling the monetary system in the world. A CBDC completely undermines the bank's power. And I'll read a passage here from this other article But I tweeted out essentially, low brainer, and is admitting defeat. Fed does not and will not need to do a CBDC because otherwise the Federal Reserve System loses all the power that it wields over the rest of the world. And so let me get into this. Give me 1 second, Mundo.
By the way, did you listen when we did that impromptu stream the other night? I carried the water there whenever you were beating your cat.
Yeah.
That was next level. My broadcasting professors would be so proud.
Would they?
No, probably not.
Oh.
Because they'd be like, "What the hell did he do with his life?" That was my first awakening. Was one of my broadcasting professors showed us. This is while you're looking that up, just a little tangent. Showed us this news clip, and it was talking about like testing. Like he was one of the people that put the news clip together. It's talking about like these like lab tests for some kind of disease type thing, blah blah blah, whatever. And he was like, so what did you guys notice of that? And some people were like, oh, like what he was like, what was eye catching? People mentioned different things, but a couple of people were like, oh, that like one clip that showed like that huge lab rat, like by like somebody in a trench coat, like in a medical, white coat, carrying a lab rat and like putting it in something else. And he said, do you know what that's from? And they were like, I assume whatever test they were running. And he was like, no, that's stock footage. He said, the whole goal is to get people to see something and go, wow, this is a big deal. And then they go out and talk to their neighbor and say, did you see on channel 11 that giant freaking lab rat? And then that person tunes into channel 11, sees the commercial for Swiffer and buys more Swiffers. Yeah. So that the Swiffer company will then spend more money on channel 11. He said, that is the entire goal. There's no integrity about it. There's nothing. And I remember like in college saying they're like, wow. And so then it was funny because then I actually interned at ESPN and I got to look smart for once. Whenever like one programming director came in, talked to all the interns and was like, what is the main goal here at ESPN? And everybody was like, hard-hitting sports coverage, bringing the most entertaining sports coverage, blah, blah, blah. And he was just going, nah. And I just raised my hand and I said, to make money. And he said, bingo. I said, exactly. And they said, how? I said, basically what my professor said. I was like, to get people to pay attention and only to pay attention so that they see the Swiffer commercial, buy more Swiffers, and then Swiffer spends more money on ESPN. And he said, exactly. That's it right there. I was like, damn. And like, so it shattered my worldview and has been, that maybe was the early seeds of me becoming a Bitcoiner. But anyways, so you.
News Made Simple brought to you by the Bitbox O2 by Shiv Crypto.
Yep. Yeah, I know, right? Buy more Bitboxes so that they spend more money with us. That's the whole shebang. The good thing with Bitcoin advertising, I think, is that it comes from an honest place. We would never most
of the time.
Yeah, we wouldn't just take money just to take money. We would take a sponsorship because we believe in the project.
Exactly. So I found the news item. So this is from wallstreetonparade.com and it is entitled, this is from May 31st. So a couple of weeks ago, or last week and a half, whatever you want to call it. And this is from Pam Martins and Russ Martins. So if you just want some like credibility or whatever, go do some research on who they are. But this is it's pretty legit. So I'm just going to read a little bit of this. So it's titled Credit Unions and Banking Groups Warn of devastating consequences of a U.S. central bank digital currency. Credit union and banking trade groups have released a joint letter to the chair and ranking member of the House Financial Services Committee warning of, quote, devastating consequences if the Federal Reserve moves forward with the central bank digital currency, CBDC. The letter was sent on May 25th, one day before the committee convened a hearing on digital assets and the future of finance, examining the benefits and risks of a U.S. central bank digital currency. That hearing took testimony from only one witness, Lael Brainerd, the vice chair of the Federal Reserve. The fact that credit unions, which frequently serve unionized labor, joined with the banking trade groups to sign off on the letter lends credibility to the quote devastating consequences the letter enumerates of a central bank digital currency. A CBDC would allow the Federal Reserve to compete for deposits with credit unions and banks. The letter correctly assesses the downside of such moves, which are, pay attention, folks. So I quote, and as I mentioned on this show, but I'm quoting, private money is created through financial intermediation by banks and credit unions, the process in which financial institutions take deposits and lend out and invest those deposits. Private money is used by financial institutions to provide funding for businesses and consumers and thus supports economic growth. Introducing a CBDC will be a deliberate decision to shift some volume of private money to public money, with potentially devastating consequences for the cost and availability of credit for consumers and businesses. In sum, the savings of businesses and consumers would no longer fund the assets of banks, primary loans, but instead would fund the assets of the Federal Reserve, primarily securities issued by the Treasury Department, Fannie Mae, and Freddie Mac. In a similar vein, the letter warns, in effect, a CBDC will serve as an advantaged competitor to retail bank deposits that will move money away from the banks and into the accounts of the Federal Reserve, where the funds cannot be lent back into the economy. These deposit accounts represent 71% of bank funding today. Let me read that again. These deposit accounts represent 71%, nearly 3/4 of bank funding today. Losing this critical funding source would undermine the economics of the banking business model, which, by the way, the banks are the shareholders of the Federal Reserve, severely restricting credit availability, increasing the cost of credit, and causing a slowdown of the economy. ABA estimates that even a CBDC where accounts were capped at $5,000 per end user could result in $720 billion in deposits leaving the banking system. Davos wants to destroy the banking system in the United States, which would destroy domestic investment. So we are witnessing one side trying to preserve America and the other destroying it.
So the Fed is trying to preserve America.
Yeah. And you can hate the Fed. I still hate the Fed. I'd rather be on their side if they win
Then
not
Davos.
on a Euro panopticon, global panopticon.
Oh, I completely agree there.
So that's just a sure sign that we're not going to see a CBDC in the United States. Not
because
just
the Fed doesn't want to see it.
Yeah, not just because it's going to take 15 years to make it happen, but the banks lose all their power. Like, they are the largest lobbyist group, arguably, in this country. So why would they just bend over to Klaus Schwab in his banana hammock?
Banana away. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't think they will.
Yeah.
And
by the way, this goes back to the story I shared last week. Also, how these banks are having to bend over to their customers and creating Bitcoin-based products as well, which I think is just another slingshot opportunity for them to build their new financial system on Bitcoin, whether they like it or not. But they rather do that on something that they can't control and issue stable coins on top of Bitcoin or whatever, as opposed to having something like Ripple or Ethereum replacing the Swift system and have that be issued by the IMF.
Yeah, I mean, for them, if Davos takes over, they'd rather have something they can't control, that nobody can control,
Yeah,
than something that they can't control and Davos can.
exactly my point.
So there, I brought it to smooth brain level. Um, Phil's big wrinkled brain.
It's not that wrinkled.
it has a couple.
I just take advantage of like groups I'm in because they act like my aggregation, like judge report, I guess. And then I'm like, oh, I can take this and take this, and this makes sense with my bias and what I'm trying to convey to anyone that will freaking listen to me. But I mean, I don't know. It's just things that are interesting, things that are plausible that could make sense based on what's happening in the world, and just molding that into hopefully a comprehensive narrative.
Molding it, molded by it. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think that's what's going to happen. Um, I think they're gonna. I think they'll win, but it's just gonna be ugly in the meantime.
Yeah.
Um,
In other news, you want to touch on the Bitcoin bill proposal, crypto, whatever it was. I wasn't really on top of this thing.
I wasn't on top of it either too much, but like I just know that first of all, it's a bill that's just gonna be DOA, dead on arrival. I liked what John Carvalho posted. He said it's DOD, dumb on delivery.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. Because it is not. I mean, it's just, you know me.
It's
I'm
an
so sick of.
attempt. That's
Yeah,
what it is. It's an attempt.
it's an attempt, but it's gonna go like it makes me cringe so hard seeing any politician when they're like, I have introduced my bill to do blah 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 blah, and it's like it's just not going to do anything. Congratulations, you know. Like,
so like I don't want to really take that stance per se because like Lummis is Lummis, and then what's the other Gillibrand or whatever. I don't know too much about her, but isn't like so Lummis is technically like a Republican, and isn't Gillibrand a Democrat?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of like it seems, and it's a great strategy and attempt here, but it looks like a bipartisan effort to make somewhat comprehensive crypto legislation. And like I said, I see this as an attempt, but I think it is a correct move it's a good move in the right direction. And it's just showing the country and the world that, hey, Bitcoin is going to be a topic of discussion that is very serious and is here to stay, and that both political parties need to work together and pay attention on. Now, again, it's the states, right? Like, as much as Cynthia Lummis kicks ass, these are still, I guess, like statist actors. There's good people in there. I throw her like in that category, and Rand Paul and Thomas Massey and those other select few. But essentially, hopefully, this doesn't just walk into more like consolidation of state power over the monetary system, and everyone else and just the average Joe or Jane gets kind of screwed over by whatever they determine. But Cynthia Lummis is a staunch, proud Bitcoiner, and I think she's just trying to roll the ball into the right direction. And again, this is just an attempt, and it's just showing that, hey, she's mature enough to, and others on the other side of the aisle are mature enough to come together and try to make some sort of legislation. A lot of this is, I think, revealing to us that Bitcoin, for the long term, what they want to do is see it as a commodity. But then again, I mean, who knows? Maybe it gets deemed a currency. I really don't know what that's going to look like, but it's going to, this bill, I think, further again emphasize that Bitcoin's a commodity. Even Ethereum, I think, is a commodity under the terms under this piece of legislation, which
Mhm.
is interesting.
Yeah.
But that also kind of reveals that they don't want to make Ethereum a currency, because if it was deemed a currency, then maybe that would be an opportunity for like more Davos-sided thinkers to use Ethereum as like the CBDC of the US potentially. And again, that goes back to that bifurcation of Team Fed versus Team Davos. They don't want CBDC in this country. And a lot of it was also, defining, I guess, like what like crypto asset is a Ponzi and what's not, and what's a uh, registered security. And so a lot of this legislation, I think, is going to be more that focused and just try to screw over as many shitcoin projects as possible. But then
Well,
again, it's like, how strong is each side? Like, is the Davos stakeholder capital side and those people in power in Washington on the Hill going to be more supportive towards those projects because it's aligned with their Davos minded stakeholder capitalism agenda, and they're going to try to preserve those sort of projects? And like, are those projects, do they have enough clout enough to lobby to preserve whatever dominance and standing that they have right now? Or does someone more sound mind like Cynthia Lummis kind of come in and say, no, we need to just stamp that out and focus more on Bitcoin, whether it's having it be a part of this basket that backs treasuries, or if we're gonna shift more towards like a green policy. And again, maybe like the green policy, renewable energy, maybe that's something that she's gonna try to come to a compromise with people on the other side of the aisle that on the surface they act like they care about living in a green renewable energy society. But I don't know, like there's a lot of nuance here, and again, this whole thing is more like an attempt, a push towards what the future of Bitcoin and crypto legislation and regulation looks like. But as
well,
far as like regulation on this, and them being so generous and nice that, oh, we won't tax any movement of Bitcoin under $200, like, yeah, that was really generous of you.
yeah.
No one's,
We really,
yeah,
really
no.
appreciate you not taking money from us.
Yeah, what about like a
Thank you.
thousand transactions that are $199?
Oh,
Like,
there's gonna be a ton of them.
yeah. I mean, this thing isn't going to pass. I think this is just like a kumbaya come together thing, maybe more like Republican push saying that, hey, we can negotiate with Democrats on Bitcoin legislation because Bitcoiners are a great voting constituency. And we want to further excel our dominance for the midterms. Because that's really, I think, all of this is really about at the end of the day, like taking over, like turning the midterms red, because everybody on both sides of the aisle is like fed up with the current administration. Like Joe Biden has like 35% or 40% approval rating. Like, it's a shit show. People are fed up. I mean, this is another reason why the Fed's trying to rein in inflation. People are speaking up against this, and even if it's not Biden's fault, people blame the president of their current economic status. And so this is just a way to turn that around.
Yeah. Yep. Um. Well, let's just put it this way: it's a little messy out there.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's it for this week's episode. Other than our price prediction, um, here's my price hope that it's under 30 grand next week.
That's under.
I would love to buy more at a
Hmm.
lower price. What do you think is going to be the case?
I think it might be over. I'll take the over, because we saw it like hit 31 this past week. And I don't know if that was like anticipation about new rate hikes. And maybe that was a sign of more capital flying into Bitcoin from all around the world. And so I don't really know.
I mean, it's been bouncing between 31 and 29 here for, let's look at the chart. for our Boston friends.
And like, I don't know what's really causing that. I mean,
I have no
people
idea. Since like the end of May,
people getting like hopium of like the this legislation we just talked about was maybe going to be good news for price or something. Or I mean, I heard that there was a like a hardware tech security company that put their treasury into Bitcoin, but I mean, this company hasn't been around for very long. I mean, a lot of the driver of price is market sentiment at the end of the day, and then market manipulation is what dampens the price.
mm-hmm.
Futures markets or whatever it might be.
Yeah,
so I don't know. I'll like, I'm not a fortune teller. I'll just take the over on this, I guess.
All right. Well, plebs, we will see you next week. We appreciate all of you, and we appreciate the Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. Go to shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin made simple. Use that promo code, 5% off. We'll get use Bitcoin made simple. It'll get 5% off. And you plebs keep do the heavy lifting. Help me with Movies Plus. We need more subscribers because the more subscribers we get, the more content we get, the more we get out there. So we're growing, but help us ramp up and let's get it to the next level.
So, more importantly, help us help you uncuck yourself with the entertainment that you're trying to put into your brain and soul.
Yeah,
like that's what I think what Movies Plus is really all about. Like say it's the anti-Netflix. It's just the production of entertainment and truth.
And that's what we want. That's what we want to push out to the world. So appreciate all you guys, and we will catch you guys next week.
Peace out.